It is the early hours of December 11, 969 AD. Constantinople, the greatest city on earth, sleeps. Inside the sacred palace, in the private bedchamber of the Byzantine emperor, something has gone terribly wrong. The guards find him on the floor. Not on his bed. On the floor. The man who once made entire armies turn and run in the opposite direction, the man Arab chroniclers called the Pale Death of the Saracens, is lying dead in his own bedroom. His skull is split open. His jaw has been shattered. His body is cold. His wife is nowhere to be found, and here is where this story becomes something you will not forget. Because this was not a random killing. This was not a foreign enemy. This was not even a rival general staging a coup on the battlefield. This was planned. Carefully. From inside the most secure building in the Byzantine Empire. By people the emperor trusted completely. Today we are going to walk through one of the most dramatic, most shocking, and most operatic deaths in all of recorded history. This is the death of Nikephoros II Phokas, Emperor of Byzantium. And it is absolutely extraordinary. To understand why this death matters, you need to understand what Nikephoros Phokas was. He wasn't just an emperor. He was a weapon. Born around 912 AD into one of the most powerful military families in Byzantium, Nikephoros spent his entire life on campaign. He fought in Anatolia, in Syria, in the mountains and deserts where the empire bled against the Arab world for generations. He was disciplined to the point of fanaticism. He slept on the floor rather than a bed, wore a hair shirt under his armor, and reportedly never smiled in public. In 961 AD, he did something nobody had done in centuries. He retook the island of Crete from Arab occupation. Then he pushed into Syria and seized Aleppo. Then Cilicia. He gave Byzantium more territory than any emperor in over 200 years. His troops worshipped him. His enemies feared him. The people of Constantinople were less sure. He was harsh. Cold. He taxed the church. He didn't play political games. He made enemies the way other men made friends, effortlessly, and without noticing. In 963, after the Emperor Romanos II died suddenly, the army proclaimed Nikephoros emperor, and that is where the trouble began. Before we get to the palace intrigue, you need to feel who this man was on a battlefield. Because the assassination of Nikephoros Phokas only hits as hard as it does when you understand just how impossible it seemed. Arab chroniclers from this period documented their fear of him directly. They called him the Pale Death of the Saracens, a nickname earned not just for his victories but for the way he conducted war. Controlled. Relentless. Like a machine that only moved forward. He pioneered the use of heavily armored cavalry, the cataphracts, as a shock force that could smash through infantry lines. He wrote military manuals that were studied for centuries after his death. His campaigns returned Christian relics, cities, and entire provinces to Byzantine control. But things were about to get complicated. Because Nikephoros Phokas, for all his genius on the battlefield, had one critical vulnerability. He had never learned how to read a room. He was socially awkward, politically tone-deaf, and deeply unpopular with the civilian aristocracy of Constantinople. He looked down on diplomacy. He ignored courtiers. He trusted soldiers, not politicians. And in a palace full of politicians, that was a fatal mistake. In 963 AD, the same year he was crowned emperor, Nikephoros made a decision that would ultimately destroy him. He married Theophano. Theophano was the widow of Emperor Romanos II, the very emperor whose death had opened the door for Nikephoros to take the throne. She was staggeringly beautiful, dangerously intelligent, and possessed of political ambitions that made the men around her deeply nervous. She was also, by most accounts, completely out of Nikephoros' league, and both of them knew it. The marriage was politically necessary. It gave Nikephoros a connection to the Macedonian dynasty. It gave him legitimacy. It gave him sons to protect, Romanos II's young boys, who were now technically co-emperors under his guardianship. But it gave him something else too. An unhappy wife. Nikephoros was 15 to 20 years older than Theophano. He was rough, monastic, uninterested in the social world she thrived in. He reportedly smelled of horses and sweat even in court. Ancient sources describe him as physically imposing but deeply unappealing as a companion. Theophano endured the marriage. But she was watching. And she was waiting. And she was about to meet someone very dangerous. His name was John Tzimiskes. If Nikephoros Phokas was the empire's most dangerous general, Tzimiskes was the empire's most dangerous man. Where Nikephoros was cold and imposing, Tzimiskes was charming and magnetic. He was also physically extraordinary, short but powerfully built, with a face that ancient sources describe in almost embarrassing detail as remarkably handsome. He was also Nikephoros' nephew. And his best general. Tzimiskes had served brilliantly under Nikephoros for years. He commanded the eastern campaigns in Syria. He was brave, tactically brilliant, and personally popular with the troops in a way his uncle never quite managed. The relationship between Tzimiskes and Theophano began at some point during the mid-960s. The exact timing is murky. Byzantine court sources are careful about this, but what is clear is that by 969, they were deeply involved, and they had moved from an affair to something far more dangerous. A plan. However, nobody expected what happened next. Because Nikephoros, somehow, found out. In the months before his death, he exiled Tzimiskes from Constantinople, removing him from his military command. It was a move that should have ended the threat. Instead, it simply forced the conspirators to act faster. The plot that formed in late 969 was methodical. Tzimiskes was in exile, but Theophano was still inside the palace. And Theophano had access. Access to the building. Access to the schedules of the guards. Access to the private passageways that connected the imperial bedchamber to the outer wings of the sacred palace. The plan was simple in the way that all good plans are simple: get the conspirators inside the palace, get them to the emperor's room, and do what needed to be done. Theophano arranged everything. On the night of December 10th, she concealed a group of armed men, Tzimiskes and several of his officers, inside the women's quarters of the palace. Some sources say she hid them in baskets. Others say she brought them in under cover of a formal gathering. The details vary, the outcome does not. She left a door unlocked. And then she went to bed, or at least appeared to. Nikephoros, by all accounts, had no idea. His guards were stationed outside his room, but the threat had come from inside. He trusted his wife. He had banished his rival. He believed the danger had passed. This is where everything changed. It was December 11th, 969. The city was preparing for the Christmas season. Inside the palace, in the small hours of the morning, the conspirators moved. They made their way through the darkened corridors, guided by someone who knew the layout intimately. They found the emperor's door. And they entered. What they found surprised them. Nikephoros was not in his bed. He was asleep on the floor, a lifelong monastic habit he had never abandoned, even as emperor. The floor beside his bed, covered with a thin mat and a bearskin. For a moment, the conspirators froze. They searched the room, certain they were in the wrong place. Then one of them found him. And what happened next was brutal. They dragged Nikephoros Phokas from the floor. This man, who had ridden into 100 battles, who had taken Crete and Aleppo and Cilicia, who had stood unmoved on a dozen different killing grounds, was woken in the dark and hauled to his knees on the floor of his own bedchamber. He reportedly tried to fight back. At 60 years old, half asleep, unarmed, in a nightshirt, he still tried to fight. Tzimiskes struck him first. Accounts describe a sword blow to the face, his jaw shattered, blood everywhere. Then more blows. From multiple men. On the floor. In the dark. He was struck on the head. His skull fractured. He fell, and he did not get up. The man who had terrified the Arab world, who had rebuilt Byzantine military power from the ground up, who had spent 40 years surviving war, died on the floor of a cold room in December, killed by men he had eaten with, fought alongside, and trusted with his life. When it was over, Tzimiskes sat on the throne. And the guards outside the door had heard nothing. By morning, Constantinople knew. John Tzimiskes was declared emperor before the sun rose. The transition of power was so fast, so complete, that there was almost no resistance. The army accepted it, the civilian bureaucracy accepted it. The Patriarch of Constantinople, after some negotiation, accepted it. Theophano, however, did not receive what she had been promised. The Patriarch refused to crown Tzimiskes while the woman who had arranged her husband's murder lived at court. Theophano was exiled, first to a convent, then to various remote corners of the empire. She never returned to power. The woman who had orchestrated the most audacious palace assassination in Byzantine history died in obscurity. Tzimiskes proved to be a genuinely capable emperor. He campaigned brilliantly in the east. He stabilized the empire. He was, by most measures, a better ruler than the man he had killed. But history remembers the murder. It remembers the locked door, the concealed soldiers, the unlocked corridor. It remembers a legendary general dying on a cold floor in the dark. It remembers that the greatest threat to the most feared man in the Byzantine Empire was not an army, not a siege, not a rival emperor, but the woman sleeping in the next room. The death of Nikephoros Phokas is not just a story about murder. It's a story about the gap between a man's reputation and his reality. About how the skills that make you legendary on a battlefield can be useless in a palace corridor. About how power, no matter how absolute, is never truly safe from the people closest to you. Nikephoros built an empire's military with his hands and his genius. And he lost everything, in the dark, in his nightshirt, on the floor of his own bedroom, because he trusted the wrong person. That is what makes it so extraordinary. And so human. If you enjoyed this journey through history, subscribe for more untold stories from the past.